The sun had barely slipped beneath the jagged Arizona horizon when Mike Dawson finished locking the corral. The evening sky burned with streaks of copper and dusty violet, the kind only the desert could paint. He had lived on this ranch for years, too many, maybe, ever since his father died and left him the land, the debts, and the quiet. Mike didn't mind the quiet. It kept him distracted from the memories he didn't want to revisit. He was headed back toward his cabin when he heard drunken laughter rolling up the dirt road. A wagon approached, swaying like the men riding it had lost the battle with whiskey long before sundown. Mike recognized them, local ranch hands and troublemakers who hung around the saloon more than their own homes. He cursed under his breath. The last thing he wanted was their foolishness near his property. "Evenin', Dawson," one of the men shouted, grinning as if he carried news worth celebrating. Mike stood still, jaw tightening. "Evenin', what are you doing out here?" The wagon stopped in front of his gate, dust swirling around the wheels. Two men jumped down, barely able to stand straight. Then Mike noticed her. A tall Apache woman stood beside the wagon, hands tied but posture unbroken. Her long dark hair was wild from the wind, her eyes sharp as flint, watching everything and nothing at once. She didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't plead. She stood like a pillar carved from the desert itself. One of the men slapped the side of the wagon and laughed. "We brought you a gift, Dawson. Figured you could use some company. They said she's one o' the Apache strays caught wandering near the mines." Mike's stomach twisted with disgust. "Untie her. Now." "Oh, come on," the man insisted. "It's just a joke. Thought you'd loosen up for once." Mike stepped forward, voice low and dangerous. "I said, untie her." The laughter died instantly. The men exchanged looks, muttered a few curses, and cut the ropes before stumbling back into the wagon. As they rode away, their laughter returned, echoing across the desert like a bad omen. Silence settled. The woman didn't run, didn't move. She just stared at Mike with steady, unreadable eyes. The firelight from the cabin flickered across her face, revealing exhaustion, hunger, but no fear. "You can come inside," Mike said quietly. "I'm not like them." She waited a moment, as if measuring the truth in his voice, then followed him toward the cabin. Inside, the air was warm, smelling faintly of old wood and coffee grounds. Mike set a cup of water on the table. She took it, drinking slowly, still watching him. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, almost unsettling in its certainty. "We're alone," she said. "Let's do what's necessary." The words froze Mike where he stood, not seductive, not fearful, but practical, resolute. Spoken like someone who had survived too much and didn't have the luxury of hesitation. Mike nodded slowly, realizing she wasn't asking for anything except safety, warmth, and respect. And he intended to give her all three. The cabin crackled with soft firelight, shadows shifting across the wooden walls like restless spirits. Mike added another log to the hearth, stealing a glance at the woman, Nayland, she would later tell him, who sat quietly at the small table. Her eyes followed every movement he made, not with suspicion exactly, but with calculation. Like someone who had learned long ago that trust was a dangerous thing. Mike cleared his throat. "I'm heating up stew. Not much, but it's warm." She gave the smallest nod. No emotion, no gratitude, just acknowledgement. But even that was something. The pot began to bubble, filling the room with the smell of beans, pepper, and whatever else Mike had thrown in earlier. He ladled 2 bowls and placed one in front of her. She examined it carefully before taking a cautious sip. Only then did her shoulders lower slightly, as if the warmth reached a place inside her cold for far too long. They ate in silence. Outside, the wind scraped across the desert like a warning. The cabin creaked, old wood settling as the temperature dropped. Mike watched Nayland set her spoon down carefully, her posture still perfectly straight, her hands steady despite everything she had endured. "You can sleep on the cot," Mike offered. "I'll take the floor." "No." Her voice was firm, not harsh. "I sleep by the door." Mike frowned. "It's cold there." "Cold is not my enemy." The simplicity of the statement sent a chill through him. She stood and walked to the door, inspecting the latch, the hinges, the cracks where moonlight bled through. She was calculating every possible threat, every weakness in the structure. Mike realized this wasn't just habit, this was survival. He leaned against the table. "You're expecting someone to come after you." Nayland didn't turn. Not expecting. Knowing. That answered more questions than it created. Mike wanted to push further, but something in her rigid silhouette told him to wait. So he returned to the fire, poking at the embers until sparks flew like fireflies. Minutes stretched long and heavy. Finally, she spoke. "Your men," she said quietly, "the ones who brought me here, they think they did something amusing. What they really did was bring danger to your doorstep." Mike stiffened. Danger. Nayland faced him now, her expression calm but edged with exhaustion. "The men who held me don't laugh. They don't play jokes. They don't forgive." A cold knot twisted in Mike's stomach. Who are they? Men who trade people like cattle. Men with no homeland, no honor. They move in shadows, through borders. And they want me back. Mike felt anger rise in him, not at her, but at what she'd endured, at the idea of someone chasing her like prey across the desert. "You'll be safe here," he said quietly. For the first time, Nayland looked directly into his eyes, really looked. There was no softness in her gaze, only a hard truth forged by survival. "No one is safe," she whispered. "Not yet." Outside, a distant howl echoed across the plains, coyote or something worse. Inside, their uneasy alliance formed in silence, two strangers bound together by a threat neither fully understood yet. Morning arrived quietly, the kind of dawn that felt hesitant, as if even the sun was unsure it wanted to face the cold desert air. Mike woke on the floor with a stiff back, but he didn't complain. He turned his head toward the door, and found Nayland already awake, already standing, already listening. She hadn't slept at all. Her posture was alert, tense, as if she expected the world to crack open at any moment. Mike rose slowly. "Coffee," he offered, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Nayland didn't move. "They're close." Mike blinked. "Who?" She gestured toward the window with the slightest tilt of her head. He stepped forward and peeked out. Nothing but open land, low brush, and the faint golden glow of early light. "I don't see anything," he said quietly. "You won't," she replied. "Not yet, but I feel them." Mike set the kettle on the stove. "You should tell me who's after you. I can't help if I don't understand." Nayland hesitated, actually hesitated, something she hadn't done since the moment she arrived. She sat at the table, folding her hands in front of her with soldier-like precision. She looked exhausted, but determined. "They captured me 3 days ago," she began. "Near the edge of our land. There were 6 of them, 2 white men, 4 Mexicans. They carry no flags, no loyalty. Their business is people." Mike swallowed hard. "They planned to sell me across the border. High price for an Apache girl," they joked. Her voice didn't crack, didn't waver. But her eyes flickered with a memory she wished she could bury. "I waited, watched, studied them. Eventually, one fell asleep. I escaped before dawn." Mike's hands curled into fists. "You walked all the way here?" he asked. "No," she answered. "I ran, hid, doubled back. I survived, but I did not outrun them." She lifted her gaze to the window again, jaw tightening. "They track like wolves. They don't give up." A sudden breeze rattled the cabin door, and Mike saw her flinch, not out of fear, but out of readiness. She was prepared to fight or flee at any moment. He poured 2 cups of coffee, though she only wrapped her hands around hers without drinking. "Why didn't you go to Fort Lowell?" he asked. "Too far," she replied. "They were too close. And I did not expect," her voice softened for the first time, "to find your men. The ones who delivered me." Mike grimaced with shame on behalf of the town he lived near. "They didn't know," he muttered. "They're idiots, not criminals." "Idiots cause trouble too," she said plainly. "But you," she paused, studying him with those sharp, unblinking eyes. "You did not treat me as they did. That is, unexpected." Before Mike could answer, a sound sliced through the quiet morning. Hoofbeats. Soft at first, then growing. A cold tension snapped through Nayland's body. "They're here." Mike grabbed his rifle off the wall. Not because he was eager, but because in that moment, the responsibility became real. Heavy. Unavoidable. He looked at Nayland. "Inside. Now." She shook her head. "No. We face them together." The hoofbeats grew louder, clearer, closer, multiple riders. Dust lifted on the horizon. Mike's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "Whoever they are, they're not taking you." Nayland exhaled slowly, like she'd been waiting for someone to say that. And outside, the desert braced itself for confrontation. The hoofbeats rolled toward the ranch like incoming thunder, each strike of the horses' hooves vibrating through the dust. Mike stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, while Nayland positioned herself beside the window, eyes narrowed, tracking every movement outside. She didn't cower. She didn't hide. She measured the threat like a warrior preparing for a final test. The riders emerged from the heat-blurred horizon, 4 men on dark horses, dusty coats, rifles strapped across their backs. Men who rode with the confidence of predators. The lead rider slowed first, raising a hand to halt the others. His horse pawed the ground, impatient as its master. Mike recognized the look in their eyes. Hard, calculating, men who were used to getting what they came for. The leader spit into the dirt. "Mornin', Dawson." Mike didn't answer. "You've got something that belongs to us." The man's voice was slick, almost polite, but dangerous underneath. "An Apache girl. She escaped our camp." Mike's jaw tightened. "No one here belongs to you." The man smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "She's valuable. We got buyers waiting. All we need is for you to hand her over." Quiet like. "No." The word left Mike's mouth before he even thought about it. Nayland watched through the narrow slit between the curtains. She noted the weapons, the spacing between the men, their horses' restlessness. No fear in her, just strategy. The leader leaned forward in his saddle. "Maybe you didn't hear me right. That girl ain't worth dying for." Mike leveled his rifle. "Neither are you." A tense silence hung in the air, thick as desert heat. The other riders shifted, hands twitching near holsters. The leader exhaled slowly, studying Mike like a man reconsidering his approach. "You're making a mistake," he said calmly. "We're businessmen. We settle things easy when folks cooperate." Mike didn't lower his weapon. "Ride away." A shadow crossed the leader's face, pride wounded, patience thinning. "You think you can stand in our way? We know her tribe. They'll pay too. One way or another, that girl's profit." Inside, Nayland clenched her jaw to keep from reacting. She had expected violence, but hearing the man speak so plainly, as if she were livestock, stirred a fire inside her she fought to control. Mike stepped forward, voice steady. "Last warning. Leave." This time, the leader's smile disappeared completely. He motioned to the man beside him, who rested a hand on his rifle. "We'll be back," the leader said. "With more men. And when we return, you won't have options." "We'll be ready," Mike replied. Another pause. Then the men turned their horses, kicking up a cloud of dust as they rode off. Slow at first, then faster, disappearing back into the desert. Mike lowered his rifle but didn't relax. Nayland stepped out from the cabin, standing beside him. "They will return," she said. "I know. You risk too much." Mike looked at her, really looked. "Some things are worth the risk." For the first time, Nayland's eyes softened, not with weakness but with recognition. Respect. The wind shifted, carrying the lingering echo of hoofbeats. The standoff was over. But the real battle was just beginning. After the riders disappeared beyond the ridge, the desert fell silent again, too silent. Not peaceful, but waiting. The kind of quiet that warned of storms yet to come. Mike kept the rifle in his hands long after the dust settled, scanning the horizon for any sign of return. Nayland stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes following the path the riders had taken. Her breathing was steady, but her mind was racing. Mike could practically feel it. "They won't stay gone," she said quietly. "No," Mike agreed. "They'll bring 6, maybe 10 next time." "Let them bring 20, he replied. "We'll fight." She turned sharply. "No, you cannot fight them all. You shouldn't fight any. This is my burden, not yours." Mike met her gaze. "You're under my roof. That makes it my problem." For a moment, the tough, unbreakable facade in Nayland's eyes flickered with something softer. Gratitude. Guilt. Both. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "We have to leave," she said. Mike sighed. He'd known those words were coming. "Where?" "Fort Lowell." Mike's eyebrows rose. "That's nearly a day's ride." "On their fastest horses," she said. "On your wagon, longer. But it's the only place I know where they won't follow. My mother's brother serves as a scout there. He will help us." Mike looked over his shoulder at the ranch, his land, his father's land, the only home he had left. He'd spent years holding it together, fighting storms, debts, loneliness, but this threat was different. This wasn't something a man could fix with hard work and a strong back. "You sure you trust them?" he asked. "I trust family," she answered simply. That was more than enough for Mike. They moved quickly. Mike hitched his 2 strongest horses to the wagon, tossing in supplies, dry bread, beans, a small barrel of water, ammunition, blankets. Naylin assisted without needing instruction, her movements efficient, purposeful. She checked the wheels, the harness, the saddle straps. She moved like someone raised on the land, someone who understood the desert better than most men ever would. As Mike secured the last crate, he caught her watching him. "What?" he asked. "You're not like the men in your town," she said. "Is that good or bad?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Good." They climbed into the wagon. Mike took the reins but waited, giving her time to look back at the ranch one last time. Surprisingly, she didn't. Instead, she fixed her eyes on the path ahead. As the wagon rolled forward, rattling across the dry earth, the sun climbed higher, lighting their route in harsh gold. Hours passed. The land shifted from flat plains to low hills scattered with mesquite. Naylin finally broke the silence. "You didn't have to help me." Mike kept his eyes on the horizon. "Someone had to." She studied him for a long moment. "You may not understand this now," she said softly, "but what you've done, it means more than you think." He didn't answer. He didn't know how. The desert wind picked up, blowing sand across the narrow trail. Behind them, far in the distance, dust clouds began to rise, small at first, then spreading wider. Naylin saw them first. "They're coming," she whispered. Mike snapped the reins. The horses surged forward. The real escape had begun. By the time the wagon neared the low ridge overlooking the foothills, the sun had dipped behind a blanket of clouds, turning the desert into a gray, tense landscape. Mike could hear the pursuers behind them, far but closing. The horses were exhausted, their breaths coming out in hard bursts, hooves kicking up tired sprays of dust. "We're close," Naylin said, pointing ahead. "My people are just beyond this ravine." Mike guided the wagon down the narrow slope, wheels scraping rock. The path opened into a wide stretch, where several Apache huts stood among juniper trees. Smoke rose from small fires. Figures moved quietly between them, warriors, hunters, elders. As soon as they spotted the wagon, a sharp call rang out. Within seconds, warriors approached, bows raised, rifles glinting. Naylin stood tall in the wagon, raising her hand. "Shi-a Naylin, Dibbe Lijani Dine," she called out, her voice strong, steady. The warriors stopped instantly. Recognition shifted through the crowd. An older man with braided silver hair stepped forward. His gaze swept from Naylin to Mike, pausing slightly on the rifle beside him. But there was no fear, only assessment. "Naylin," the elder said in a deep, quiet voice. "We feared you gone." Naylin stepped down from the wagon and touched her forehead to his briefly. "Uncle." Mike felt tension melt from her shoulders for the first time since he'd met her. The elder then turned toward Mike. His stare was sharp but not hostile. "You brought her here." Mike nodded. "She needed help. She always did things her own way," the elder muttered, almost fondly, before signaling two young warriors. "Take the horses. Bring water." As Naylin explained everything in her language, the capture, the escape, the men pursuing her, and Mike's role, more Apache chiefs gathered. Each listened with stoic intensity. When she finished, the eldest chief, a tall man with weathered skin and a hawk-like gaze, stepped forward. He studied Mike in long, deliberate silence. Finally, he spoke. "You protected one of ours." Mike swallowed. "Anyone would have." "No," the chief corrected firmly. "Most would not." Another chief added, "Many look at us and see enemies. You saw a woman in danger." The words humbled Mike more than he expected. But before he could respond, a scout rushed into the circle, breathless. "Riders," he said in Apache, pointing west. Even without understanding the language, Mike felt the shift in energy. The air sharpened. Naylin stiffened. "They found us." The chiefs exchanged quick glances. Plans formed without words. The eldest chief turned back to Mike. "You brought danger with you. But you also brought her home." He stepped closer, eyes intense. "So we give you a choice." Mike frowned. "A choice. You may leave now," the chief said, "and take a safe escort back to your land. Our warriors will protect you until you are far from threat." He paused. "Or you may stay among us, as ally, friend, and brother to our people." The words hit Mike like a blow. Stay. Among them. It was more trust than he had ever expected. Naylin stood at the chief's side, watching him with an expression Mike couldn't fully read, hope, perhaps, mixed with uncertainty. The chief continued, "But understand, Dawson, if you choose to stay, your life will no longer be the one you knew." The desert wind fell still. The camp waited. And for the first time in years, Mike felt his heart pulled somewhere other than the ranch, other than loneliness, other than survival. He met Naylin's eyes. and knew this choice would shape everything to come.